Hello, thanks for giving us a little bit of time to show you the new Amira administrative dashboard. The goal of the dashboard is to give you tons of information about the progress and status of your K-3 young readers. What we're going to do today is kind of walk you through how to use the dashboard and give you a little bit of background on where some of the numbers and information kind of comes from and how it's calculated. What you can see here is that the dashboard consists of 4 views: a tracking view, a screening view, a science of reading view, and a growth view. We're going to take you through all 4 of those views and show you the questions that they're aimed to answer. One of the things that you'll see in this little demonstration is real data, but it's real data about a fictitious district. And our goal will be to help you to get ready to explore your own data. In doing that, probably the most important means of slicing and dicing the information is the set of filters that you see at the top. These filters allow you to expand or narrow your view to 1 or more schools. In this drop-down box, you'll see all the names of your schools, and you can just select the ones that you want to focus in on by clicking just to the left of the name. There is a grade view that enables you to look at data for just 1 or more than 1 grade at a time. And there is a class view. If you select schools, this view will narrow down so that you just see the classes in the selected schools. If you haven't filtered by any particular school, all of the classes within your scope of visibility, your permissions will show up here, and you can confine the information that you see to just those classes. So we're going to show using those filters once or twice as we go through this, but keep in mind that they're always there, always the same across the 4 views, and enable you to shape the data you're seeing in all of the different charts and widgets. So we're going to start with the tracking dashboard. It's the simplest of the 4 views. It's really meant to answer some very straightforward questions. One is, how is assessment going in the current assessment window? And the second is, how much is Amira being used for practice and who is using the software for practice? The left-hand side of the view contains information about assessment, and the right-hand view contains information about practice. As you can see here, the top of the view is meant to give you an at-a-glance status. This is telling you that 48% of the students have completed their ORF or foundational assessment, and 25% have completed the dyslexia screen. Those numbers may be pretty similar in your district if you're having all the students do both. They may be wildly disparate depending upon your approach to using the dyslexia screener. On the right-hand side, you get a similar high-level view of how much students are practicing with Amira to improve their literacy ability. This gauge gives you a sense of how many students are working with Amira in the current week, and this gauge, the style, tells you how many students over the course of the full school year have been practicing with Amira, more or less consistent with our dosage recommendations. So just below the high-level gauges are 2 charts that show you information about status by grade. Here on the left, you can see how many assessments have been completed by each grade level and what percent of the students in that grade have gotten through the assessment process. This is the first of a number of examples I'm going to show about the interactivity of the Amira dashboard. As you can see, when I point the mouse somewhere, it's going to highlight that and often give you lots of additional information. In this case, if I click on the red bar, the chart is going to tell you how many students are yet to complete the assessment process in each grade. Almost 9,000 here in third grade, 1,812 in second grade. So as you move your mouse over information, you'll see lots of additional stuff. Down at the bottom, you can see a chart that's showing how many assessments have been completed across your set of schools. And again, you can see as I glide my mouse around, I'm going to hone in on one particular school at a time. Another example of interactivity is the sorting capability. Many charts over in the left-hand axis have a sort dial that allows you to structure things in order. So here now I've sorted by the school that has the greatest percentage of assessments completed. That's school 33. And off to the right, you can see some schools that haven't begun the assessment process. Now, this is cramming a lot of information into a small space. So every chart has an expansion widget that allows you to make it full screen. Now you can see that this information is a lot more readable, and you can see over on the right-hand side, the dashboard will give you some background data on how you might want to interpret the information you're seeing. It's also important to say that every single widget can be printed and that you can basically do a bunch of stuff, including annotations, right into your charts. All right, so we've seen some great stuff around tracking and being able to see how much practice and how much assessment has taken place with the software. But I'm going to move over now and go to the screening view. Here we're going to get a little bit more complicated because we're getting to some more interesting information and analytics. What the screening view is all about is telling you where energy and attention needs to flow across your student population. Just as the view we just saw was divided left hand and right hand, so is the screening dashboard. The left hand view focuses on dyslexia risk, and the right hand part of the view focuses on where students are struggling from an achievement perspective and may need an RTI or some other form of intervention. So let's talk about dyslexia first. At the top, you're going to see a nice little summary that highlights how many students are at risk with a high signal, how many are kind of at low but moderate risk, and then how many you don't need to worry about at all. As you move down, you can see how your students are comparing to our national flag rate. If green is there, it means we're flagging less. Red means we're flagging more. And you'll see a total number of students who've been flagged across your scope of visibility. There's also a great chart that highlights precisely which schools have students with dyslexia risk. So if I put my mouse on the red, I can now see the number of students that need some follow-on screening, some follow-on attention across every school. So school 18 is 29, school 10 is 21, you get it. On the right-hand side of this particular view, we can really hone in on the students who need help. So this particular chart is showing you the status of students in the previous assessment window and then helping you to see how they've grown and changed into the current screening window. So in this particular case, we had 976 students who were pre-decoders, basically not yet reading early text in the previous window. Now, only 701 of those students still have that status, and almost 300 have moved up and you can see them distributed in these more advanced or green levels. And that's really the way this particular view works. It's showing you change from a window-to-window perspective. You can see that change using a variety of indications. We started here by seeing change in the F&P levels. We can use Amira's estimated reading age and click on that. You'll see the little chart update here in a second. Now I've got some different kinds of information about students and the change that you're seeing from an area score perspective. So the next section of the view helps you to understand how many students are kind of gaining and moving up, in this case 904, and how many aren't progressing the way they should, in this case 800, or about 16% of our population. Similarly, there's a more detailed view that allows us to hone in on mastery by the set of schools. And here I'm going to blow this chart up, and you can get an idea for how much information is really available across all of the schools in your viewpoint. Right? Here I'm going to move the mouse. We're going to see lots and lots of students in untested status. Here's the students who are red. Here's the students who are green. And you get a bird's eye view of where you've got trouble spots and where everything is going pretty well. So now we're going to go on to our third dashboard. This is perhaps the view that takes the best advantage of the power of Amira's analytics. So as you know, Amira is all about the science of reading. It's really the core idea behind the software. And what we want to do in this particular view is to help you use science of reading principles to identify special areas of emphasis. At the top of this view, you're going to get, again, this is a common theme, some pretty high-level data. Over here on the left, you'll be able to see every single day how many minutes your kids have read with Amira and how many words they've read with Amira. In this case, over 25 million words. On the right-hand side, you get a summary of fluency status in terms of whether student fluency is that's going to show up in yellow, above, that's going to show up in green, or red below the expected fluency level for their particular grade. Now, that's great stuff, but still pretty high level. The next part of the chart really gets down to some interesting information. What you can see in these 5 gauges is an attempt to help you to hone in on where strengths and weaknesses in your programs might be showing up. What you can see here on the left are 3 indications of student word recognition ability. And what you see on the right are 2 indications of student comprehension ability. And you probably recognize this is following the pattern of Scarborough's reading rope. It is reflective of the tabs that teachers see in their diagnostic report. Now, this is a great place for us to see the power of filtering in action. So I'm going to go from looking at the information about all students to just looking at the kids who are in kindergarten and first grade and just starting out. And you'll see the filtering thing come up, and you see all the dials move. And now we can see that for some of the beginning readers, there's some real struggles with places like sight recognition and with comprehension. They're doing better on decoding and phonemic awareness. And this is often a terrific indication of where your programs may need some shoring up. It could be that with the emphasis on structured help, that the kids are progressing the way they should with some of their word recognition capacity, but maybe falling a little bit behind on the comprehension front. What these dials are essentially doing is comparing students in terms of their percentile ranking with kids in Amira's national samples. So you're getting a real benefit because Amira is working with hundreds of thousands of students across the country, and we can track at any moment in time how those students are doing compared to your kids. So the next part of the Science of Reading dashboard is really intended to help you get right to the places across your area of interest that are doing particularly well or doing particularly badly in some dimension. And this is called a heat map view, maybe for some obvious reasons. Wherever there's something of interest, you'll see some intense color, and wherever things are not so interesting, you see some very light, faded out color. And what we want to do here is maybe look at the green row, and we can see some places where word recognition ability is strong. Here in School 19, we've got 41% in green. Here in School 22, likewise. What we can also do, though, is go down to the red row and see some places where the word recognition ability is not so good. And if we put our mouse on the darkest color of all, we see school number 6 has 87% of their kids in the red zone for word recognition. We can do the same here for comprehension. So this is helping us to hone in right away where we may need to put some extra effort. So I'm going to now click in on school number 6 because this is going to show you Amira's drill down capabilities. Wherever I'm seeing a school, I can click and I can get information about the classes within that school. So now you see the classes within this particular school. Some are doing a little bit better, but a lot have that very dark color that signifies problems. So coming soon, you'll even be able to click through on the classes and see information about individual students. That'll be ready no later than this summertime. So the idea is that in almost all circumstances, you can essentially go from a view of the district or multiple schools at a time down to looking at classes and then ultimately to hone in on particular students. So I'm going to take my filter off now. We've explored the Science of Reading view, and I'm going to move to our fourth and final view, which is the growth view. And the growth view does exactly what the name implies. It helps you to understand which students are progressing the way that you hope and which students are not. The top of the growth view is going to give you some information about the goodness that Amira is generating. So this particular chart's near and dear to our hearts. The idea is that it's going to bucket your kids first by grade, as you can see here, and then into 3 groups. Those students who have made essentially no use of the software, those students who are using it some, and those students who are getting close to our threshold for typically seeing significant impact. And you can see in this district what we see in almost every district, which is that students who are using Amira a lot are growing fantastically more than students who are not. So this view will give you the ability day by day to track and measure the impact of Amira practice. The growth view, however, is not just about Amira. It is intended to help you to understand the velocity of improvement for your kids across the board. And in this second chart, you can see the same grade breakdown, but now we're looking at how many students are growing as fast as your state expectations require and how many are not keeping up with that growth rate. Sadly, as you know, what we're seeing in this COVID year is that most of the time, most students are falling behind the pace that is needed. And you can see that in this particular example. Here is probably the most interesting and useful chart in the admin dashboard today. The idea, just like the one we showed in the screening view, is to help you see shifts in progress between the current assessment window and the previous window. So if you're looking at this chart right now, you'd be comparing your spring outcomes to your winter outcomes. If you were looking at this chart a couple of weeks ago, you'd be comparing winter outcomes to fall outcomes, and so on. And what this chart will show you is in the previous window, we had 1,793 kids who were more than 1 year behind. We had 1,305 who were significantly ahead. The rest were spread out in the middle. And now what we're doing is looking at where those students are after the most recent test. And we can see that 1,463 of the 1,793 are still behind, but many have forged ahead. Similarly, we can see down here of some of the kids who were slightly ahead in the previous window. Now some have fallen behind, some have jumped even further ahead. So what this is doing is grouping your kids into green boxes where progress is pretty darn good, and red boxes where progress is not what you want. So this is going to give you a bird's eye view of how things are changing from one window to the next. And as we've seen in the other views, you're going to get that same kind of idea spread across all of your schools. And so here we're seeing the number of kids who have a velocity that is below expectations and the number of kids who have velocity above expectations in each and every school. So last thing I want to show you is pretty interesting. There are two views of your students distributed by F&P level. There's a view for where they are today, and there's a view for where they are a couple of months ago. I'm going to go ahead and expand this full screen so we can take a look at it. I'm going to filter down and kind of narrow this to a single grade. I want to be able to see this in a way that's pretty meaningful. So in this case, we're going to take a look at second graders, and we're going to expand the chart again here. We'll wait for the filter to kick in, and then we'll click our expand button. You can see that little box there. And what this will now let us do is to look at how our second graders are progressing in each and every F&P level. To do that, I can move my mouse over the letters at the top. You can see this. And now it's going to show me how many students in each and every one of the schools are at level A, now level B, level C, level D, and so on. So at a glance, I can get a really good sense of where the kids are at, where instruction ought to be happening. I can look and see how those F&P levels are changing over time. I can really see progress on a daily, weekly basis, probably like you have never been able to see it before. So as Amira works with your students, this information will update constantly. All right, we've seen pretty much everything. Let me close with a couple of suggestions. First is when you see the data for your own schools and your own students, you'll likely have questions. If you do, don't hesitate to reach out first to your success manager, or to our support team, and we're happy to give you one-off information or to walk you through a more detailed version of this video. Second suggestion is that you know this is a new capability and a new feature for Amira. It's something we put a lot of work and thought into. It's something we got a lot of help with in terms of ideas and opinions from many of the districts that we work with. But it's also very, very much a first version. So if you have ideas or thoughts about how we can make the admin dashboard more useful for you, please let us know. With that, I'm going to say thanks for your time and have a great experience with the new software. Bye.